Are you starting a startup or looking for funding? This is the biggest and the most painful mistake most of the startups make. Here is why. So first of all, with money comes power, makes decision making easier. However, it's also easier to make the wrong decision. Thus, it's really easy to waste someone else's money. It is much easier to waste someone else's money than waste your own money. I used to work as a software developer in the startup that was creating a data platform brain scientist. The startup founder Amelia received the pre-seed investments, and she decided to follow the common way of building the product straight away. She started building the product, had a contract, then she started iterating the product, built Node, because the initial product didn't meet all the use cases, and then she realized that if she continued doing things that she had doing in default pattern way, she just ran out of money, and it happened. The startup has been freezed because she ran out of money. The consequences of getting quick funding led Amelia to following the default startup pattern, just starting building, and she threw money on it and it didn't work. It shows us how the early funding might blind us out from doing essentials and put it into just do it mode. So I received money, I need to do it. And this just do it mode might not work. It's still important to focus on essentials. Another thing that comes when people getting funded is that they started receiving the power and expressing it as the big corporation business. It creates an overcomplication for startups. It switches off the most important benefits of the startups, that are flexibility and freedom, because applying the corporate mindset straight away definitely limits the unique powers of the startup. And I've been developing another product that was a startup for multi-level marketing marketplace founded by Andrew. Andrew was a big corporative guy. He had a lot of experience in business, and he raised the finances for his startup. He started building the startup, and then the first iteration didn't work. Let's do it again, said Andrew. We continued developing the next iteration based on the feedback we've got. The next launch showed us that we are out of season right now for that particular niche. So Andrew said, all right, let's do it again. The next launch showed some momentum, but it still required some iteration to make a product perfect. Next time, Andrew was angry because the competitors show up that did better product. Andrew put up a lot of process into startup development from the beginning. Because he had money, he had that power, he didn't have a choice to think about the alternatives. And this process shoot in his leg, because this process extended the development cycle of the startup, and thus the startup lost momentum while competitor arise. And this is another disadvantage of getting funded quickly. It might blind you out and put you into a position with big business mindset, so you know that you have a lot of funds and you don't need to think about essentials that might lead to side effects, consequences like this. Because if you pay out of your pocket, you're going really lean. You probably don't have that much finances that you can invest in a startup out of your pocket. And you're turning on this creative mode that helps you to understand how we can do this thing in the leanest possible way, so we will get the result we want without having huge budget. Focusing on the lean strategy is not about saving money, it's actually about focusing on essential. But a huge budget when you get funded, it's easy to neglect the lean strategy. And when you're neglecting the essential, you usually become unproductive. So lean strategy is about being productive. And Toyota, known for his amazing production system, learned it also a while ago. So Toyota has the production notification system that indicates any issues that are happening during production. This system called Andon. So when the Toyota was opening a new plant in the United States, they were implementing the add-on, and they were guiding the team in the United States how to implement the system. So the US plant managers were obsessed about all these techniques, and also they were obsessed about tech gear. They had a lot of investment, so they bought a lot of tech gear around to build this add-on system, and it didn't work. So when the Japanese team came to help the US team with the add-on system, they told them the first thing, let's eliminate all the technology. The US people were surprised because they were thinking it's all about money, it's all about technology. So they eliminated all the technology and started doing this end-on system is literally like papers and notes and so on. It led that the people working on plans started focusing on essentials, started focusing on delivering the proper message. Thus, they have practically learned how to use the end-on system for the best. After doing this practical exercise, the system began to work. Eventually, they added technology to the system to simplify it. But the main thing here consists that when the end-on has been invented by the Toyota in Japan, they had really limited budget. They have invented this end-on with the essential purpose to improve the quality of the manufacturing. They were doing it with like flags, with papers, with pens, and so on. Eventually, when they become a car manufacturing giant, they afforded to embed the technology. In the US, they did vice versa. They started with investments, with money. They had this room. And this kind of investment mindset let them neglect the essential. And essential in their case was to teach the team about using end-on. They confused the essential with technology. So eliminating the technology helped them to highlight essential again and get it back to work. And the same happens with the startups. The early investment might really distract you and distract the startup founders from doing essential. However, when you're turning on the lean mode, and usually it happens naturally when you have a limited budget, you focusing on the essential. Thus, you become more productive and you become successful quicker. How paradoxically it is that you can become successful quicker with lower budget. Another bad side effect from being fund that you will need to care about your investors and they will require your attention. And it might really distract you from doing what important, because you will need to dedicate a lot of time and effort in communicating with investors, explaining them your opinions, your strategy, your plan, while if you don't have such a dependency, such a responsibility to explain and prove something to someone, you will have much better freedom and much faster, much efficient decision-making capability. And I have been working as a software developer in another startup where Jonathan, the founder of this fintech startup, was really obsessed with team building. So he got funding. The first thing as he launched the startup, he focused on building the team and he really did a great job. However, he was so obsessed with team building that he just neglected to build his relationship with investors. He knew that this is unproductive to spend a lot of his time to communicating with investors, so he neglected it. And the team has been built, the MVP has been built, everything looked like it goes smoothly. However, the pre-seed funds exceeded and he was going back to investors for Series A and they refused him to get Series A because they found dozens of reasons. The Jonathan told that they just don't like me, but the true reason of this was that he didn't care enough about investors. They require a lot of attention and he decided to use this time more efficiently, but he had these negative circumstances. That's why early funding might be dangerous, because you become dependent on that funding, and if you neglect the relation with your investors, you might run into a trap and just fail your startup. Another thing to consider when you're seeking for the early funding is that usually investors come with the teaching mindset. Sometimes it's good when you want to learn something from investor and when your investor is really open-minded and he knows your industry, your niche. But usually investors are just foisting you their beliefs and they're foisting you their mindset. And because this investor had a particular experience that resulted in his particular belief, doesn't mean that you should follow the same behavior or the same technique. Thus, when an investor insists on doing the things the way he prefers, it might prevent you doing open-minded decisions and thus result in some inefficiency and failure. It would require, again, a lot of time and energy to convincing the investors about your opinion, and as far as they usually have more authority, it's going to be hard to do so. So again, you will spend a lot of your time and energy on the wrong thing when you focus in on growing a startup quickly. Again, I've been working as a software developer in another startup that has been developing a fleet management platform. The startup founder, George, managed to find the early adopters of the startup quickly. That was a really quick early success because people start using the platform. Eventually, the company that was the first customer decided to acquire the startup in really early stage when there even no stable product. They acquired the company and then started financing it. They started dictating their requirements with which George wasn't comfortable. However, George didn't have enough authority or even enough desire or passion, or I would say time, to convince the investor that the things in this platform should be done in a slightly different way. He was doing his best, but it wasn't enough. After a few failed releases, when the things go wrong and the bugs appeared because of the speed up processes insisted by investors, the investing company became really doubtful about this startup. Eventually, they have terminated the contract and the startup was closed. Despite the early success the startup has, it was still a pity that such a great idea was failed just because of the miscommunication. And this usually happens when you oblige yourself with some additional communication responsibilities in your business, like communications with investors. So everything is clear now, but you might probably say, okay, Yuri, what to do next? How I can start building my startup if I literally have no money or low investments? I can't build the platform for $100. What should I do? And this is the great question. And in this video, I'm not trying to convince you to not get funded, but what I'm trying to do is to show that funding is not the most important thing in startup. That's why I would suggest to delay the investment and funding as much as you can. If you are capable of investing the initial research, initial prototyping out of your pocket, do it. And usually it doesn't cost a lot to do the market research, to build some shaky prototype, or do some market validation techniques to just validate your idea. Because after you do these essential things in the right way, your product will get enough traction. It will get the customer base, you will become noticed. And this is the time where the investors will start reaching out to you themselves. Once it happens, you will be able to have an opportunity to choose the investors and the funding conditions that are the most suitable and comfortable for you. And here is another important thing to consider when getting funding. Always interview your investors like you would interview the employees. I know that it might feel some kind of ethical way that you have authority over him. When investors gives you fund, they have an authority over you. However, you should be equal in the conversation. The investors has his considerations, and you should have your expectations and considerations. Don't just jump in the first investments. I would say have the negotiation with few venture firms or with few investors and find out what are the opportunities out there. And when you do this the way I've suggested, when you get your essential first, when you finance your market research, validation out of your pocket, and when you gain some traction, when investors start reaching out to you, you will have more room for communicating with multiple venture capital firms, and you will have much more powerful arguments towards your considerations, your conditions, investments, because you will have a nice track record until that moment. Because the most important thing to know is if you make a wrong employee hire, you can always terminate your employee. It not cause you emotional burdens. However, it's not the end of the world. But if you pick up the wrong investor, if you sign up to the wrong conditions that you don't like, or you're just uncomfortable working with that firm, with that investors, there is probably no way back, because you already signed up the contract with investors and you're obligated to continue. And that's why I would conclude this video by stating that funding works best with the established, validated products. So if you want to learn more how to do the market validation in the leanest way possible, so we can finance it out of your pocket and then gain traction and get financing your startup easily, make sure to subscribe to my channel where I'm sharing different techniques and strategies on how to run and grow startups successfully. Thank you for watching. If you want to watch more, click here. Thank you so much. And if you like this video, click the like button.